Hi folks, my name is Chris Lang and I'm one of the driver's ed instructors here at Colchester High School, and I'm going to walk you through our expectations for families and students and for ourselves as instructors over the next 20 to 30 minutes. So let's jump right in. So, like I said, my name is Chris Lang, and for this installment of Driver's Ed, I will be one of the in-car instructors and the classroom instructor, and Mr. Samler will be an in-car instructor for the majority of your students. I have 10 students, and Mr. Samler has 16 this time around. The mission statement for traffic safety education. The mission of traffic safety education is to provide the opportunity for all students to develop knowledge, attitudes, critical thinking, habits, and behaviors that enable them to be safe and responsible operators, passengers, pedestrians in the increasingly complex environment of the highway transportation system. That's a big task. All of those things need to get done between now and the end of June, and we can't do it alone. So our purpose here is to figure out how we can form a partnership between all three of the interested parties, the teacher, the student, the parent, and the guardians, and to help let you know how to support your new driver to be successful and safe and competent. All those things are very important. So there's three phases of instruction. This is basically the way that the class is blocked out. We've got a minimum of 30 hours, so we do 2 hours per day of the classroom, and you've all seen the schedule and signed off that you can be at the uh, scheduled times. And also, we will have a couple of makeup days for those unforeseen illnesses and that sort of thing, but you can't miss more than two. I'll get to more of that in a minute. So classroom's got to be 30 hours. Behind the wheel training, you have to drive with me or Mr. Samler for 6 hours, and you'll also be in the car for another 6 hours of observation. We go out in teams of two, and your student has likely already seen their driving schedule. The home school connection part is that we need for students to have guided practice outside of our normal time of those 6 hours of driving. We can't get them to the point where they'll be able to pass without you practicing with them a lot. And you obviously have to do the 40 hours anyways, which I'll get to more in a minute. So parent involvement always is helpful. Parent guardian involvement is always helpful in getting students to success and to be able to get past the tougher parts of the test, which is usually the maneuvers like parallel parking and Vermont turnarounds. So you have to have at least 40 hours of driving outside of driver's ed. So those 6 hours that you'll drive with me do not count. And 10 of those 40 hours have to be nighttime hours, which is a little bit tougher in the summertime. So if the anniversary of your permit is in the fall, I would save those nighttime hours for then. If you haven't discovered Road Ready yet, the app to track those hours for you, I would suggest that you go out and download that onto a device, and that way it will it'll keep track of your hours for you. So 40 hours of driving outside of the driver's ed time that you'll be driving with me and Mr. Sandler. We need a team effort, like I said before. Each of us has a role. I'm going to try and provide quality instruction and leadership in the classroom and in the car, and I know that Mr. Samler will as well. Students need to study and practice what we teach you and implement the keys to success that we'll share in class. And the parent needs to provide safe, guided practice and a positive example. And also, parents and guardians need to be willing to disengage from some of the practices that they were taught as best practices that have changed now in light of new technology. For example, we were all taught 10 and 2 as the safest way to have our hands while we're driving. Well, in the age of airbags, that's not the safest way to have our hands. So now we do 9 and 3 or 8 and 4. So some things that we thought we knew might have been updated. So we need to support those as well. So, number one, as a parent and guardian, set a good example. Start with basic skills like proper hands position, like I just said. Move from simple to complex tasks. If you haven't started driving with your student yet, please do. Having 8 to 10 hours behind the wheel before they get to us makes them much more competent by the end of the 6 hours that we've got them for. So, don't go out onto a busy street and have them try a Vermont turnaround, do it in a parking lot first, or have them try and back into a parking space. So simple to complex, and then move from procedures to process. So practice those basic vehicle control things, like I said, in parking lots and really quiet neighborhoods. There's lots of those around Colchester. Practice lane changes and turns and timing and intersection things after you've had a chance to really practice them in quiet areas. So you're building up to those more stressful situations. So when you are taking your student out driving, here's how you want to do it. You want to know what you're doing. Don't just jump in the car and say, oh, we're going to go for a drive. That's great. You can do that occasionally, but ask your student what they're doing in class. Ask your student what the last drive they went on was in class, so that you can go out and think about how to help support them in meeting their objectives. Pick places that are appropriate for learning certain objectives. If you want to do Vermont turnarounds and it's early on in Vermont turnaround time, find a parking lot where you can practice it. Colchester High School is great for it. Choose those low risk environments, like I said, and pick driving routes that you and your students are familiar with, so that there's familiar landmarks along the way. You can say, hey, make sure you don't forget to turn left towards Mazza's or something like that. So that's something you want to think about. Realize that teens, because of their inexperience, are at a higher risk on the road than anyone else. And the more we can do together in that early cooperative intervention, using all of our knowledge as driver's ed instructors and all of your knowledge as parent guardians, it's really the only way that we're ever going to reduce risk for students and improve their driving at the same time. So things to think about when you're headed out for a drive. Always check for the learner's permit. That's going to be one of those things that allows your student to also get ready to be a mature driver and realize that they need to have their license on them every time that they're going to be going out alone. When you're driving with your students, please give them immediate and precise feedback. So if they do something well, let them know, and try and give a lot of praise to the good things that you're seeing. And for every one negative, try and give 3 or 4 pieces of feedback that are positive. Be really patient, but alert. Look further down the road than you think you need to. You actually need to see situations developing earlier than you do when you're the driver, because you need to be able to explain to your student what the problem is that you see down the road that they might not see because they're looking too close to the end of the car. Try and get them to project their view further out as well. Like I said, always find the positive. Lots of folks will jump into a car and they'll try and head out on a really long trip and just, take an hour on the road driving down Route 15 or something like that. Those are really important trips to have. But if you have a number of short trips that total an hour just around town, your student is going to be introduced to a whole lot more varied driving condition and activity, more right-of-way interactions and things like that, which they really need a lot of practice with. Keep your instructions really simple. Don't talk too much. When you're the driver, make sure that you're setting a really good example. Those rolling stops that your kids tell us that you do all the time, make sure that you're fully stopping. If they don't fully stop during their test, it's going to be an automatic fail. So start setting a really good example for your teen. Get your teen to describe what they're saying and let them do the talking. And you can also let them talk you through the maneuvers that they're doing. So you can say, okay, well, you're going to do this Vermont turnaround. Talk me through the different steps. and they should say, okay, I'm looking at the intersection, I'm clearing the intersection to make sure there's no cars or pedestrians, and now I'm going to signal late once I'm in the intersection, and so forth and so on. So let them narrate what's going on in their head, and then you can guide them towards uh, the things that you think are really important for them to be paying attention to. Make sure you set ground rules early for what's going to be expected, staying a couple miles an hour below the speed limit so they get used to that feeling for when they have to go take their test, that sort of thing. Make sure you plan a route out in advance so that you're not thinking, oh, do we want to take a left or a right here? Know where you're going to go beforehand. That's going to cut down on their confusion as well. And most importantly, this is a fun time. Don't forget to have that fun. It's a little bit nerve-wracking, it's a little bit stressful, but it's a really great way to connect with your kid and share an experience together. So don't forget to have the fun. A few words about graduated driver licensing. Every student in our class, when they get done, will be eligible, assuming that they pass, will be eligible to get a junior operator's license. And there's really three whole stages, and in each stage, the driving privileges increase gradually. So the way that it looks is right now your student has a learner's permit. That's where they're supervised. They've got someone who's 25 or over and unimpaired with them all the time. Then they'll get their junior operator's license, which they can't get without passing driver's ed in Vermont. And then at the age of 18, once they've had their junior operator's license, they can get their full operator's license. Or if they don't take driver's ed, they have to wait till they're 18 and probably have a relatively higher insurance rate because of not taking driver ed. So make sure that if you have questions, you have comments, you have concerns, you're wondering why we do something the way that we're doing it, reach out, because we really do need to work together to get your students as safe as possible. Be a good role model while you're driving. Set those limits. Provide really safe places for guided practice. Reinforce the learned behaviors, things like lots of students, when they first start driving, they don't realize that the feet are just as important as the hands when it comes to turning, and they don't understand what they have to do with their feet coming off the brake in the middle of the turn and that sort of thing. So, so make sure you're reinforcing those learned behaviors that might not just be innate for everyone. Make sure you communicate really clearly with your kids and with us. Let us know if there's any questions or issues, and don't forget to have fun. My contact information is here. If you have any of those questions, you can call the school at the number here and they'll leave me a message. I don't have a direct line, but the best way to contact me would just be through my email here. So feel free to reach out. Looks like I got it done in 15 minutes, so there will only be this one installment. Don't look for part 2, and have a great time driving with your kids. Let us know if you have any questions, concerns, or if you would like to discuss ways that you can take your student out for practice, or places to take them for practice for specific things. We drive all the time with students all over Colchester, and there's a lot of different places that are really good for certain skills. So feel free to reach out, and hope to hear from you soon. Take care.